Hi, Clara. Thank you very much for joining us on NAR Fellowship. I'm looking forward to talking to you. Um, so this is for people inside and outside of this little corner of the internet. Some of you may know what I'm talking about, and many of you don't. We're going to get into that. But Clara is a researcher, and Clara, thank you very much for being on the show. Um, and also, if you could do a little introduction about yourself for our audience, that would be great.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you. This is fun because every now and then I get to hear from Valerie, and so that's really great. Um, so I'm Clara. I'm a sociology graduate student at the University of Notre Dame, and I'm studying how people come to be a part of this space and its adjacent spaces online, and increasingly in person, which is just really exciting for me as I just came back from this Northwestuary 2024 event. So I'm pumped about that aspect as well. Does that
Um,
help?
yes, so let me give a quick, brief explanation of this little corner for people who don't know. Um, so there's a conversation arena that involves four main guys: Jordan Peterson, uh, John Vervaeke, Jonathan Peugeot, and Paul Vander. And there's a whole bunch of us little creators in that space as well, whether YouTubers, writers, and other people, Substackers, and all this kind of stuff. And it's kind of an amalgam thing. Originally in the Bridget the Meaning sphere, a Discord server, which is a social media platform, was created to facilitate in real life community that facilitated what's called Estuary Protocol, which is a small discussion um, uh, protocol that helps facilitate meaningful conversations with people. And it facilitates people not hogging all the conversation. So some people are extroverts and some people are talkers. So this gives equal time to everybody. And so this is a segment of the corner, or the little corner, as Sevilla King coined the term. So Clara was just talking about the Northwest Estuary that just happened, and I'm really excited to learn more about that. But first, I'd like to talk about the main point of our fellowship is learning about learners and talking about learning, and more from a self-learning perspective. And one of the questions I like to ask all my guests is, what is your learning journey? How did you start? Some people have a very eclectic background like I do, which I'll go into in a future video, but I like to spotlight my guests. So it's not a usual question that people ask. So sometimes if you have to verbally process to get to the answer, that's totally fine. So what was your beginning of your learning journey like?
Wow. I love this question because I think it does kind of force me to think a little bit. Like I remember like my first day of kindergarten just feeling so like anxious, and sitting down on the carpet or whatever and being like, oh my goodness, can I do this? Right.
Oh,
Don't we all have and then I learned there was going to be a snack later and I was good. But
oh yeah,
I'm snack oriented.
yeah.
Um so I remember always reading as a child. My mom always took us to the library and helped us pick out books to read, and I think that really made me someone who was really curious about the world. Spending all these times, even just walking through a library, I feel like your mind kind of expands into
Yeah.
new possibilities. I'm such a nerd, but
Yeah.
um, it's that new book smell. No, that
Yeah.
library smell, right? So the point I was saying, I was someone who was always sort of really curious about the world, and at least that part of that was kind of really encouraged. Like you should always kind of have a project or be learning something. Or I remember spending a summer reading books about like how to garden and things like that as a kid, and just kind of always being really curious. And so as I got older, naturally that extended to me to something I became interested in. Oh, I have a book here. Is it show and tell time? Can I show and tell this book?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Where is it? Sorry, this is me looking at my bookshelf.
No, it's all right. Books are
Oh,
awesome.
here it is. One day, my school library was giving out books that were being retired, and I found this book. It's called Truth is One, and it was about like world religions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like that's like a temple or something. I don't know. This book itself, I guess, isn't that important, except it's like I don't know. I just remember being like really interested and curious. Um, I don't know why that's important, but it sort of was very formative for me as I started um, reading the Bible, hanging out with Mormon missionaries, learning. I remember being a freshman in high school, sitting in class and learning this word skepticism,
Oh,
and not knowing before that like what that meant, but then like
wow.
learning this word. Ooh, skepticism. I'm a skeptic. I'm somebody who approaches things with some level of skepticism. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't know if these anecdotes make sense to anybody.
No,
They
this is
make sense
awesome.
to
I
me.
love this. Thank I
Okay.
you know, I wanted it to be a an open-ended question to allow people to
Hmm.
explore and share personal stories like that.
Yeah. Okay. So there's all these sort of little nuggets and little moments of like discovery, right? Like as much discovery as you can get as like a teenager in suburbia, right? Because in a lot of ways you're really isolated. But maybe the most trans I'll skip ahead to maybe the most transformative moment for me, or most transformative story is maybe not the most, but one of the top ones. I used to ride the bus to school as like a teenager. Um, so it was like suburban environment. So you would go, the bus goes through the neighborhood and you get on and whatever. And I sat next to this girl who was this new girl in school, and she's reading this book, this like blue book. And I asked her, "Oh, hey, that looks like a really interesting book. Like, I don't think I've read it before." And she's like, "It's the Book of Mormon." And I had never heard about the Book of Mormon. I'd never been told about the Book of Mormon.
Huh.
And she explains to me, like, this is a scripture in my religion and it's really important to me. And I just remember I was so curious, but then I also sort of felt this sense of betrayal. And because I'd never heard about it before, and I kind of I got the impression that it was something that was like hidden from me,
Oh,
like something that like, a good Baptist kid should know about. Um,
wow.
and so she gave me actually that Book of Mormon, and we became good friends because we lived really close to each other, and we would walk to each other's houses and eat each other's food, and all of the all of the fun things.
Cool.
Um, but that sort of sparked curiosity for me, and I learned a lot about the Book of Mormon at that point. And I did get the impression from my family members that like this is a bad book, and then actually later on, this is a terrible story, but
Oh,
later on, the youth group that I went to, the church that I went to, would actually go on to steal that Book of Mormon and burn it in a bonfire.
oh
And
no.
so, yeah,
Oh,
this kind of, but that's to me sort of solidified um, that something was going on there, and something was
mm,
provocative about that.
mm,
And I don't know, I went on to learn a lot about Mormons and Mormon missionaries and ex-Mormons and the whole deal.
mhm.
Um, and I think a lot of it was driven by that spark of curiosity of
Yeah,
somebody else who was very different than me, and then realizing actually maybe we're not that different after all.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I grew up knowing, learning that the Mormon religion was more of a cult or heresy, and
mm,
but I I've met some decent Mormons. I mean, most of them are good, nice, good people. I just don't agree with it. But you know, 20 years ago, I was like, yeah, you need to burn the book. But now I'm like, yeah, like, what is, it's somebody's sacred book, it's like, really?
yeah,
Um, but it's interesting that you have this spark of curiosity in learning about other people's culture. Um, and so is this what kind of one of your fundamental things that kind of led you into sociology or?
I think probably, yeah. I think these kind of things inspire us to learn more, and sort of as we're on that kind of journey, then um Yeah, yeah, we sort of have to, you kind of eventually I felt like I had to, specialize a little bit. So,
Ah, what made you feel like you had to specialize?
well, let me think. So in high school, I guess, I was also sort of doing this like super like personal journey, right? Of like
Mm,
learning about like reading the Bible, trying to know Jesus for real, those kinds of things, really sort of looking for that personal relationship with Jesus Christ that people talk
right.
about. So
Yeah.
I was really doing that, and then some shit went down there. It didn't end how people wanted to end,
Oh,
But
oh.
what was I saying? I got so distracted. Okay. Then I went to college, and in my family, you were just kind of like expected to go to college. It's just a wonderful gift that we had. Where um, my grandfather on one side didn't have the chance to even complete high school or anything like that, and so um in some like in some way it's like a really big sort of gift and privilege to sort of think about yourself as somebody who can go to college. Like that was
Mm,
a really big
yeah.
deal, and it was very important to my parents that we did that. um and so going to college, you're encouraged to pursue your own questions and answers.
Mm,
And I just loved that. I loved that sort of environment, and I really
yeah.
felt like I was a sociologist. So once I got my general credits kind of out of the way and things, I met a mentor who really guided me towards that process, and then eventually said, "Hey, you should think about going to graduate school." Um,
Oh.
and so to do that, again, it's sort of even more of a specialist kind of thing where
Mm,
you want to have questions that are really important to you, like how do people come to believe what they believe over time, and how do people practice religion, or how do people move it. These are just examples of sort of research questions I've thought with.
mhm.
um, you have those questions in mind, and you're looking for all sorts of different ways to answer them.
Cool.
So that's kind of, I guess, why I felt like I had to specialize, is just because of the way the system's set up. Is
That's
you do
awesome.
want to answer questions. Yeah.
Yeah. So, sorry, my internet just froze.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
It just went circles and I'm like, "Ah." Um, but, so how did you meet Neil and, get acquainted with this little corner, and what made you want to what was the what instigated the whole, like, "I'm gonna research this?"
Yeah, well, sourdough Neil is just a really cool person, right?
Mm,
I had started going to this, a coffee shop, and I'd seen Neil there from time to time, but really it was just the best coffee shop in the town that I found myself living in. And it was COVID times, and um, I needed a good coffee shop. It was just a very practical need for me. It was like I felt like I needed a place where I could see people, um, and so we were just people who went to the same coffee shop, and
ah.
somehow we got to know each other. I don't know. We'll have to talk to Neil at some point.
Just
But
yeah. I have no idea how I actually really started connecting with some of my deepest friends, closest friends. I'm like, I have no memory. I know I kind of met them at this Bible study, but I don't remember anything after that.
yeah.
I know the feeling. Yeah, no worries.
Well, he bakes his bread, right? So sometimes, I mean, I hang out at the coffee shop. I drink the coffee, which is really the very best coffee that you can get for at least a 200-mile radius,
Oh
in
wow.
like this very kind of rural area.
Ah.
And um, so then I started talking to people in a coffee shop near there, and I started kind of hearing their stories and stuff, and I started talking to Neil and hearing his story, and these kinds of things. And then, a lot of folks that I was talking to, just, in this area, at the coffee shops and stuff, um, including the not very good coffee shop that was
Aw.
nearby.
Yeah.
I prefer so just hanging out and talking to people, and just like I've done here, hearing their stories. A lot of the folks I had meant, I don't think I said this, I had meant to study how people leave their religion. And
Oh, interesting.
um I kind of failed at that because a lot of the folks that I talked to either were becoming like witches or they were becoming really involved in learning about learning about
New Age stuff or
yes, astrology and tarot
astrology?
cards and things like this, having these new spiritual practices, getting their crystals and things like that.
Hmm.
And then quite a lot of them were becoming Orthodox Christians. And
Oh, interesting.
that was very
Wow.
surprising to me. I had heard about this movement, but I didn't really understand that, it's folks who were basically people who were kind of fed up with evangelical Christianity
Mm,
and just generally speaking, not about any
mhm,
one particular person, but a lot of people who I talked to at that church. Eventually, I would go to that church and hear a lot of folks kind of tell me the same story that they had kind of been betrayed by evangelical Christianity. They'd been let down. They weren't happy with it, and then Orthodox Christianity, where they were doing the practices, and it wasn't about what they believed, but what they did. Um,
mm, interesting.
sort of was it was a space of transformation for them, and they were processing that a lot of times in these coffee shops I was going to and talking to folks at. So
Oh, fascinating. So that's how, like, how the dialogue started with all the different people and stuff. That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. Okay, so Neil kind of heard about this project I was working on, and he told me like 2 years before I even thought about starting to actually go to this online website. He told me, "Well, have you heard of this guy Paul Vander?" And Neil kind of knows that I'm like terrified of pastors, so he didn't tell me that PVK is a pastor or anything like that. And sorry, PVK.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I it took me a long time to sort of realize that, oh my goodness, there are people who are doing the same thing, and it's actually really important. Um,
Mm, yeah. So those of you who don't know, Paul Vander is a pastor in Sacramento, California, of a dying church, as he calls it. He has a lot of elderly people in church, and it's just a small, modest little church. It's of the denomination of Christian Reformed um, church, and he has a YouTube channel, which I'll link in the description below for you. He talks to a lot of people outside of the church. He likes to he's someone high in openness but very centered, and so he likes to talk to people and find out what they really think. And people who like have walked away from the faith, whatever their faith might be, denomination, whatever, he loves to explore ideas and stuff. He has like what he calls monologue videos where he talks about what he's thinking about, which are very fascinating. And then he also does what's called randos conversations, which is someone coined the term randos, meaning random person. And so he doesn't climb up the social media hierarchy. He actually goes down. He likes to talk to regular folks, regular people. And so what Neil was referring to was how Paul Vaniclay likes to talk to people who are atheists, agnostics, left the church. It's like, what do you think and why? I really want to know. He's very low in neuroticism, which is a personality trait from the big five personality traits. And so it doesn't bother him that people disagree with him. He actually finds it intellectually stimulating and he likes to hear what people think. And because he's a pastor, he likes to talk to people. And so, um, but uh, in some of my other videos, I'll link in the description below a little bit more about this little corner, the Karen Wong interview and stuff like that. So, thank you for letting me explain that real quick. Um, so, what prompted you to finally start watching PVK?
um, well, at some point, I think Neil might have pulled up a video for me to watch and and
Oh,
said,
okay.
I think I was forced.
Ah, okay.
My
Indoctrination.
memory's not entirely clear, but when your baker sort of tells you to do something and you really like baked goods, at some point, and the arc of history is long here, but at some point, you probably have to do it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. So you were dragged in kicking and screaming.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I was captivated then by how
Ah,
similar
captivated. That's a nicer word. Yes.
I really genuinely was captivated, and oh my goodness, okay, I'm remembering now that, like, one of the first people I started watching was Chad. Okay, I started watching Chad, and
Oh,
Chad
okay.
does this interview. Chad just has done some really amazing randos, actually.
Mm,
Um, and I okay, one of the things that really early on really just kind of captured me was that Chad did this interview with Charlie Brown, whose first name I believe is actually Steven Stefan. I don't know.
right.
Um, and then I realized that like people were telling, and the stories all had the ring of truth to them, and I kind of have a really strong bullshit detector just because I've got so many cases that I have folks that I've talked to and so forth.
Yeah.
And I found myself like personally moved as people were like kind of telling these stories because like a lot of times it's the ethnographer, right? Like I ethnographer is just a fancy word for somebody who writes this stuff up. But so I was watching the videos sort of let me take my sociology hat off for a minute and just sort of be present with these people who are telling these stories. And it was wild to me, like sort of the kind of the roller coasters people had been on. And I don't know, I feel like I saw myself in them too, you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
feel like
Very relatable, and you
they were
resonated with them.
yes. And I felt like these were stories that needed to be told, and here they were. Chad was hearing them. PVK was hearing them. Um
Mhm.
They were became being, it seemed, ushered into community of a sort. Um,
Yeah. Cool.
so I don't know. So I sort of I guess I feel like I felt personally connected. You know, it wasn't just even just an intellectual interest at that point, even though I knew it was important intellectually.
Mhm.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. It really does. It's like you had the meeting of the mind meet the heart, and uh, there's a lot of the community that has grown up around PVK and
Hmm.
inclu- includes the four guys is uh, is community, and that's the drum that PVK keeps beating is we need people. People need people. We need community, and it's not a chasing after views and clicks. It's having meaningful conversations in real life and in on video, and it's kind of different. I mean, not like other people aren't doing the same thing, but the, the way the culture of our little this little corner of the internet is, it's it's just like we kind of share things that many people might not do, um, and not in a TMI kind of thing, but in a relating to one another relationally kind of uh, way, helping iron sharpens iron kind of thing. So that's kind of cool. So what, as things progress for you,
Hmm.
how did like being introduced to PVK and Chad and talking with all these people who've been on these life journeys that took, you know, you know, all these weird turns and stuff, and finding meaningful stories. How did
Hmm.
that lead to you actually doing the research that you're doing in the TLC?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I am convinced that although I've seen a lot and it's really cool and really interesting, that what I've seen is really just the very tip of the iceberg, as
Hmm.
they say.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was really interested. There's a theory actually. This guy Randall Collins, who's in this line. You've heard of Emil Durkheim. He's the guy who wrote Elementary Forms of Religious Life. Um, Emil Durkheim had this student Goffman. You might have heard of Goffman. He's the guy who
I'm unfortunately I am way ignorant on this, but some of the readers, I mean, some of the viewers and listeners might be familiar with that.
okay, well, you don't need to
With
know all
him.
this. We'll just
Okay.
fast forward to Randall Collins, who has this theory about how people form um, how basically how emotion works in groups,
Oh,
is one way
interesting.
to put it. Yeah, yeah. I guess, but the important thing, the thing that sticks out to me and to a lot of people about his theory is that, he thinks that online connections that this sort of stuff that people do online
Mhm.
is is lesser. It's not as good for forming relationships and groups and so forth. And
Mhm.
identities, I think you could read them as saying, it's not as good for that as these in-person connections.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
and as I started to sort of really get involved with this little corner of the internet, just listening and talking to people and reading the comments and so forth,
Mhm.
um, I started to think, well, maybe Randall Collins, maybe he could be sort of updated and amended because all of the time, everywhere I go, folks are on their phone. I was going to hold up my phone, but I have a flip phone actually. But
Oh,
um,
okay.
except folks are always looking down, and that's affecting their social interactions even in the real world. And
Mm.
so I wanted to learn, how do these online connections and then online and in-person connections, together, how is that
Mhm.
shaping how people are building community? Because there's community building going on online, there's building going on like in that coffee shop that I was telling you about with like Neil and me and other people in person.
Mm.
And so and now we have this estuary movement where folks are actually this was so cool. I feel like I gotta tell you how cool Northwestuary was.
Oh, please do. Yeah, if you wanna take a detour, that's fine.
Okay,
I'm
am I
yeah,
all over the
because
place? I'm
that
sorry, your podcast
you're
is
in the right zone, so it's fine. Yeah.
okay. Well, Northwestuary was just absolutely amazing. But the point that I was, I guess, making is here are these people who've never met before in person, but they know each other, but they don't know each other, but they know each other. And there was just so much buildup and so much excitement and so much kind of freaked outness um, that was going on because of that. Um, that's just also important.
Yeah.
As people are sort of entering this change space, maybe their identities are changing, maybe the way that they interact with other people are changing, maybe
Ah.
they're becoming better listeners, um, better talkers,
Mm.
um, better at using social media for things that are going to build them up and not take them down. Maybe they're
Mm.
happier. Um, so that's really what I became interested in. Sort of how is emotion flowing through these groups as people are in person, online, and then what's that doing for their identities? What's that doing for how they interact with other people?
Mm.
Um, so I don't know if that made any sense at all.
No,
Makes
that's
sense.
really fascinating because most people, there's online and there's real life, and in the corner, it's blended. And I
Yeah.
think PVK put the right foundation and spirit and that people need people, and he doesn't want everybody to talk to him. He wants everybody to talk to each other and and uh and create this uh some people criticize the little corner of being cliquish, which I think there's a grain of truth in that. I think what it is also is people who are gravitated to people of like mind. There's different um just like in high school or in the workplace or, in, a hobby thing, people are just going to gravitate to people that they like to talk to. There's just that human element. And so you've got some people who are very much who like Grim Grizz, who is very highly intellectual, very brilliant guy, conspiracy uh, talks about conspiracies and stuff. And there's other people who are very political, who are very much inspired from Peterson's like speak the truth, and no matter what happens, the good will come out of it eventually, even if you're deluged with persecution. And that's exactly what happened to Peterson. He just spoke what he believed was true, and he got lambasted and persecuted for it. And so there's a lot of people who like resonated with that. And even though he's not a conservative, he's probably more of a classic liberal. Um, but he's been kind of a lot of his calling a spade stuff has been resonating with the conservative culture within the Peterson sphere, as some people like to call it. Um,
Mhm.
And so you've got people who like and want to talk about politics freely. Some people are, me, I'm like, politics is not a big thing of mine, even though I have strong opinions on some of the controversial issues. I'm not going to go
Mhm.
into them on my channel very much unless somebody actually brings it up and we want to have a good faith conversation about it. That
Sure.
I'm okay with. I just don't like people calling each other poopy head because they disagree with each other.
Did you say
Um,
poopy heads?
yeah, that's like words. Like they call each other much worse, but that's like it carries the sentiment and the spirit of what it's all about. It's like because but I grew up with a kind of the minority in a very liberal industry in
Okay.
media production, and so I was always surrounded by people that didn't agree and pretty much slammed what I believed in. So I was very close, held it close to my vest kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, I've only in the last 10 to 15 years have I gotten more outspoken in a very diplomatic way of what I believe and why, and not to cause fights, but it's like, hey, I don't agree with this. I'm of a different opinion than you. Um, and then we can have a good faith conversation about it if you want. Mostly people, most people just want to convince you why they're right and you're wrong. And
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah, but
yeah, but so there's that dynamic in the corner.
mhm,
Um, and then there's the people who like to talk about more meaningful stuff beyond, not that politics isn't meaning, because it touches on a reality that is intrinsic to the way we live. So I kind of get that this whole it's tied up in worldviews, it's tied up in our personalities and what we hold in our values and our core beliefs and our identity. So I kind of like understand that, but there's other people in the corner who want to talk about the arts. There's other people in the corner who want to talk about more deep philosophical things. There's other people who want to have debates on religion, you know. And it's uh, at least in the PVC BVK sphere,
mhm,
it tends to be very good faith conversations, very good faith debates, intellectually stimulating without calling each other poopy head. So that's kind of important. Um, and so there's uh, people are wanting and craving this deeper connection.
yeah.
Um, and so there's two different things where people like will avoid talking about religion and politics because it's very diversive.
Oh, yeah.
Most people don't know how to have good faith conversations. I saw an article, I didn't read it, but one article was praised by Jonathan Haidt by implementing a program in their college to facilitate good faith conversations about hard topics,
Hmm.
divisive topics, instead of this cancel culture thing that's going on in colleges where people can't, shutting people down and having, because most people just don't know how to actually, not get stirred up and angry and mean spirited
Mm,
when their belief is being attacked or disagreed with,
mm,
really. And so that's kind of the culture of, uh, you know, uh, this little corner of the internet kind of thing. So I'm very fascinated by what you said about how it's these kind of people, they tend to be more high in openness, kind of. Not all of them. Some of them are very conservative and very high in conscientiousness and stuff. Um,
mhm,
but actually dealing with the dichotomy of like having real close personal friends with people you met on the internet. It's like that doesn't make sense in most circles. It's like I know the culture has gotten so weird that we accept rides from total strangers because there's an app for it. Uber and Lyft.
oh,
And
yeah,
it's like we
yeah.
would never have gotten in the car of a stranger otherwise. It's like this is how the internet has changed us.
Well,
You
you gotta
know,
check first. Do they know
yeah,
your name?
yeah. There's information exchange of picture and names of who the other person is, making sure everything's kosher. There's a bit of a safety net that infrastructure that's happened to develop that trust and mutual reciprocation kind of thing.
Mm,
Um, but I'm kind of fascinated from what you discovered from learning about stuff online and seeing the actual real uh, relationships either begin or solidify in person, or what
Mhm.
was your takeaways from the Northwest Estuary realities of meeting people in person? What is that like?
Yeah, well, I mean, I wanted to follow up on something you said, but,
Oh, yeah,
I
I apologize. If you want to follow up and then we go there, that's fine.
no, no, let's
Okay,
keep going,
okay,
let's keep going.
okay.
Um, I really actually wanted to meet people at the airport, but didn't make it there. Thank you, LaKinda.
Oh,
Uh, um, but, dude, even just from my own experience, like, I typed in the Discord, like, the night before because I was planning on, like, I had this sort of grand dream that I would make it to, like, the market in Seattle, and then I realized that to do that, I would have to spend however many hours, like, I think it was at least 4, like, 1 hour to the market, and then anyway, I was gonna have to spend a lot of time on public transportation, and I
oh,
wasn't really feeling like doing that, and so I typed on the Discord, "Hey, can anybody give me a ride?" And then Karen Wong from the Meaning Code
oh,
says, "Of
cool.
course I can." And so even just meeting, I got to meet Karen and Megan and, Dr. Green,
Cool.
just on I'm sorry, my computer did something. But I got to meet them right away, and, like, that was cool, right? Like,
Yeah.
just even from my own experience there, like, I wasn't fangirling or anything. Um,
I would
mhm.
have.
Okay, but then they were very like, you meet people and you're like, "Wow, people are actually really gracious and really kind in person too."
Yeah.
Um, and very hospitable. And then we went to the barbecue at Nate's house, right? And, I'm telling you, it was like a family reunion type of vibe,
Wow.
and everybody was sitting and eating together, and Griswold Graham, I think is he the goofy uncle maybe? I don't know.
Oh,
Um, just the amazing hospitality, Nate's whole family, um, and then one of the big activities of the evening was live streaming from Nate's living room, and it was
oh,
kind of cross over. Um, just
wow.
a little inside detail here. So, I don't know where I was going with that, but, like, there was some really cool energy in the room. It was so much fun to get to see people meeting and gathering in these pockets, people who they'd sort of been thinking about meeting for a long time, and then
Yeah.
here it was as good, I think, as people sort of thought. I think maybe there was sort of this question of, like, well, maybe these people aren't cool I mean, I don't know, or maybe there was some anxiety or something for
Mm.
some people. I don't know that that's true. I would love to hear from people if that was true to their experience, but, but then to actually see it come together, dude, I'm telling you, it was wild.
Wow. That's so cool. That is awesome. I joined the Grail Country Discord not too long before they did Northwest
Mhm.
Estuary, and it was kind of fun to see all the people volunteering to help each other get from the train station, the bus station, to the campsite, and all the different things like that. And they're coordinating a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, Jay, I wish I could go, but I was like, it's not going to happen for me. But um, I would feel kind of trepidatious about meeting a bunch of people online, and like I'm kind of like a wallflower. I would just kind of like go back in the against the wall and like watch
Mhm.
everything because I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say and do. Um,
Yeah.
but but you actually got Karen Wong kindly gave you a ride. You got to meet her daughter and the other gentleman that you rode with, and
Okay,
so
he's a
that's really kind of neat.
theologian and a priest.
The
It was a
priest.
big
Oh
stretch
wow.
for me, okay, because
If can you go a little closer to the mic again? I apologize. I missed what you said about after the priest.
oh, it was a big stretch for me, but I was on my best behavior.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Poor guy. He gets into the back of the car, and I'm like, "Hey, do you mind if I record this car ride?" He was way too chill.
Oh, he's like, okay. Priests and preachers, they deal with people. They know how eclectic we really are.
Sorry, I'm the weird one here.
Aw, yeah, no worries. That's cool. That's awesome. So, what were some highlights for you besides the car ride and stuff in the living room thing for the Northwest Estuary?
Um, yeah, sorry, I've taken us off track just talking about how much I loved the Northwest Estuary.
Oh, that's all right. You know, it's I so a big thing that they talk about in the corner is about embodying um relationships and you're not divorcing your mind from your body. And so some of us are like talking heads, and we need to actually remember to be embodied people relating to one another in person. So
Mhm.
for me, this is what the talking about the Northwest Estuary is all about. I I may not be able to get to one in the near future, but maybe someday I'll be able to go to one.
I
Um,
better see you at Midwestuary 2025. Let me tell you, Valerie.
Oh, that would be kinda cool. I'm Chicago, I'm like, I'm not sure if I can make it to Chicago, as but, I'd have to, like, figure out the finances and, uh, caregiving stuff for the family, and it's like,
Mhm,
how do I
mhm,
get there, and navigating my way through, with my vision and my hearing by
mhm.
myself. I'm like, that's a little scary for me. I'm like, I don't know if I can
Oh,
do this in the foreign city and not get lost and end up
we
in an
gotta
alley somewhere.
Amtrak you. We gotta find a way. We gotta get somebody to meet you at Amtrak. I don't know. I kind of
Yeah.
I I wanna figure this out. I'm not a good
Oh,
figure
okay.
outer, but
What when is it in it's in 2005, I know that.
yeah, yeah, 2025. Chad has a thing. There's a website or something. Is it?
Okay. We'll talk about it after the show.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I
It,
was like
yeah,
looking it up.
I'm getting sidetracked. I'm
Yes.
getting all, I'm nerding out. So I'm like, I would love to meet people. Yeah, that would be
Yes.
cool. Um
Yes.
so but um
Oh,
where would
highlights.
you like to
Other
go? Oh,
thing.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought we were gonna talk about highlights. And
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
okay, there's so many highlights. Okay, here's a secret. Night one, I meet Michael Martin, and I tell him I read his book, and I don't appreciate how much he hates on Judith Butler. And then the whole weekend, the whole weekend, he's just making fun of me, calling me a Judith Butler person, saying things like Judy Butler sucks, and I don't know. We had this weird thing going, but then he told me how to do my compost the right way and gave me some advice on my raspberries growing in my yard.
Oh,
And in the end, we had a tiny argument, and then he gave me a hug.
aw.
Michael Martin offers me a hug.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
Wild. He's got a great
Oh,
sense of humor. Just some thoughts there that I had about Michael
yeah,
Martin. Just sort of
yeah,
this contrast, like even though we totally didn't agree about gender or anything like that,
sure.
um, because Judith Butler writes about gender and he's kind of it doesn't matter.
Okay.
He still offered me a hug and was super warm to me and gave me amazing gardening advice. So riddle me
Aw,
that.
yeah, there's a lot of friendships that bond up between people who really strongly disagree with each other in the corner. It's very heartening, and it's like, just it's like because people end up having a lot of respect and
Mhm.
camaraderie with people just to be able to talk things through. And so it's kind of cool. I'm so glad you had that experience. I'm sorry he teased you, but I'm glad he gave you a hug.
Okay, so to meet like Mark Parker in person, to meet Chad in person, no mask.
Mm. Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, yeah. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
whoa, to meet
Yeah.
Sherry and Tracy and Luke and just this whole slew of people to hang out at the campsite. I hung out at the campsite.
Nice.
Absolutely wild. What happens at the campsite stays at the campsite. That's all I gotta say.
Totally fine. Totally fine. Yeah.
Um,
There's just some things that should stay with the event. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm telling you, I think it was a big event for a lot of people, and I've seen people start posting kind of what did they think about it, and I'm gonna start interviewing people next week, so I'm really excited to kind of dig into like what people were thinking. but
So
yeah.
let's talk
Sure.
about your research project,
Oh, yeah.
and maybe you can kind of go more in depth in explaining it to people what it is you're researching about the corner,
Mhm.
and also um, what feedback and hopefully people would contact you to be interviewed, and what did that look like, and how did that happen, and how do you want to facilitate that and all that kind of stuff, because I really want to help promote your research project because I think it's a really cool important thing. I was
Oh,
one of the interviewees, um,
okay.
and I really enjoyed it, and it was I kind of babbled too much, which she was
No,
very
you did
gracious about.
great. You did
And
great.
I was like, there was other things I thought of later. I'm like, oh, I should have said this, I should have said that, but I'm like, you know what, it just happened. Life just like,
Mhm.
you got to
You're
live
welcome
in
to
the
email
moment.
that to me as well, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So, maybe you can share a little bit about uh, your research project and
Mhm.
people you're kind of looking for. You're not looking for the people like me. You're looking for the lurkers to get their perspective on the and
Mm.
also other people as well. So I'll let you talk.
Okay, so I have funding for 50 interviews. After this weekend, I think I probably have funding still good in the funding. So I am paying people $30. Thank you to the I think the Religious Research no, not the Religious Research Association. They funded my last project. Thank you to uh-oh, this is embarrassing.
Oh, we
Triple
want to
SR.
make sure we get the thank you. So go ahead and do you want me to pause it real quick while you look it
No,
up?
no, no,
Okay.
Triple SR is the organization. That's good enough. They get an acronym.
Okay. Okay.
And my eternal gratitude. So I sit with people for about 2 hours. You know this, Valerie. I sat with you and we talked
Yeah.
about all sorts of things. We talked about how often you use technology and what kind of content you watch and stuff. And we talked about also about like your life story, your history,
Hmm.
where you come from. Um, you could think almost like a learner's journey. Some people
Yeah.
will say Griswold Grimm, harnessing my inner Griswold Grimm. I'll say your walk with the Lord, if that's relevant to you.
Right.
Your walk away from the Lord, if that's relevant to you. Um, whatever it is, whatever your story or your spiritual journey is, we talk about that some because I'm interested in identity transformation. Um, if you want to call it that, we don't have to call it that.
Sure. No, it's fine. I don't. It's not about money.
Um, And so I'm really interested in how building communities in person and online is something that is influential in people's stories and their narratives. And
Mhm.
so that's also something we kind of get out in the interview. Um, I don't know, is that clear or is there something that
That's
would
very
be
clear.
helpful
Yeah.
for
So you're trying to figure out people's individual stories and how that interacts with the community that is formed and how they interact with each other and how they
Mhm.
bounce that back and forth from each other.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting perspective. I just like I just like try to answer your questions the best I could, um, and it
Yeah.
was very
That's all you
private,
could do. Yeah.
So
Did you
it's
say it was
like
private?
yeah, it was private for me, and
Yes.
so it's just you and me
Yeah.
talking. It was recorded, so for your own, so you can look at the transcript later on and glean
Mhm.
stuff from it and use it in your paper that you're writing, and so you have anonymous sources, you have public sources,
Yeah,
depends on the
yeah.
person.
And yet
Um,
some folks, just like you're saying, would choose to take a video that's recorded just like this, and
mhm,
then they, on their own in their own time, with their own editing and whatever they wanna do, can then post it on their channel. That's another thing that they can do. So if folks want that video, about half people, it's designed for about half of people to take that video, whoever wants to, and
mhm,
post it on their channel or someone else's channel. Just
yeah.
so that it could be totally anonymous or it could be totally public. Your choice.
Yeah, it depends on your own comfort level. I did get my own video. I'm probably not going to share it because I shared some personal stuff that I don't want people annoying and giving grief to my family. Nothing bad, it's just personal stuff. Um, just so I thought it would help her research project. And so, what is what is the feedback and um, uh, stuff that you've gotten back are you still looking for people who are more lurkers and
Mhm.
not as active on video? Or are you looking for a mix or what is
Yes, I'm looking for both, still everybody,
okay.
but it's like, especially, like, if you're a lurker, don't hesitate or lurk. Just go ahead and send me an email, sociologyclara@nd.edu, or send me on Discord. I'm clarifications at clarifications with an A, clarifications. Um,
And
pa
I can
paste
put
in
information in the video link for you so you can just copy and
yes.
paste it.
Yes, and I won't, like, out you. I actually have this big consent form and stuff that's just basically tells you that, like, if we say it's gonna be confidential, then obviously I'm not gonna, like, tell everybody that I talked to you, and I'm not gonna tell anybody what you said or anything like that. So, yeah, if there's some way too that's easier to communicate, like, if you don't wanna be on Zoom, if you want me to call your Google Voice number, or if you want me to, like, interview you, like, via Discord, or just whatever it is that makes it easier for you or more comfortable, um, as a lurker, like, that's something we could figure out. I'm open to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's helpful for people to know because some people are very privacy oriented, and I
sure.
used to be more privacy oriented, and I just got bolder and more courageous and came out not out of the closet, but just like started being more on camera and
Mhm.
more interacting face to face with people online.
Yeah.
One of the things that helped with this green screen that I got for my chair that blocks my room. So
Mhm.
it's like I didn't feel comfortable as a girl showing my room on the internet. It was like not happening. So
Yeah.
that was one of the things I did as a former lurker and voice chat person
Mhm.
is getting the green screen to go on my chair. So you might have something like that, or you might just stay totally
Yeah.
private and you have a lot of chaos in your family. You have like little children or something, and it's not very conducive to having voice chats and video chats. Um, so I strongly encourage you to participate in the research project. We want to hear a wide variety of voices and perspectives from people. She can only do interviews with people in the US. Is that correct?
I'm gonna iron that kink out. So I
Okay.
can do I can do, with people abroad. It's gonna take me a few days to figure out how to pay you. Easier if you have a VPN.
The $30 that she's talking about is an honorarium. It's basically a thank you. Um, and it's just like, thank you for helping with this research project. It's funded by these grants, which is awesome. I think that's really cool. And if she can actually figure out what's going on to help other people have meaningful conversations and relationships um, with other people in different arenas of the world, medical industry, the arts and entertainment, um, the handyman industry. It's like there's a lot of people who work with their hands who are part of the
Mhm.
corner, and they kind of brush the stereotype that it's white collar, and it's not. It's people of different ilks that have a brain and like thinking while they do stuff
Mhm.
with their hands. So we need different voices, and different. I'm not big, political, diversity is key kind of thing, but it's kind of there is a kernel of truth to it, um, and so
Yeah.
we want to get different perspectives so that she can get a more holistic view of this little corner and how the community is
Mhm.
forming and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
um, I
Yeah.
appreciate people watching this far. This is not the only thing we're going to talk about. Um, but was there anything else that you'd like to mention that you think other people should know that would help them make a decision?
Yeah, well, okay, so feel free to contact me whether you want to be interviewed, or you just have more questions, or you saw a video that you think really explains things, or maybe you've produced a video, or you've been a part of a video even 5 or 10 years ago that is really important to this little corner of the internet, or to
Mhm.
my work. Feel free to contact me for any reason. Um, and also I wanted to talk about that diversity thing because all sorts of different diversity are really important. Like you might have gone to graduate school, you might not have a college education, you might, you know what I mean? Like there's all sorts of, you might not have a permanent address, and yet whatever you have to say or whatever you've been through, you might be religious, you might not be religious, you might be somewhere in between or skeptical or whatever it is.
Mm.
I've heard it all. Don't be afraid to tell me. Um, and I really am looking forward to talking to people.
That's fantastic. Thank you for doing this work. I'm so glad someone is actually trying to figure this thing out. Um, it's pretty massive and it's not organized. It's just very one lady was on another Discord server was saying in response to my response about the Thule Corner is that, and I think it's true, it's starting to fragment,
Mm,
which I think there's an ebb and flow in communities and thought spaces, I guess you could call it, um,
sure.
that there's just a natural um, shifting of the sands of different people kind of gravitating to each other and forming their own little arenas of communities of some so there's lots of different communities within the Peterson sphere, as some people like to
Mhm,
call it. Um, and so I to bring it back around to the learning thing, because this was all like your actual learning of this whole research project. How long is this research project supposed to be? Like a year or two, or a
mhm.
semester, or what's going on time length for you?
Yes. So right now, I would really like to have completed the interviews by the end of the year, which is a little bit of a stretch because there's so many people and so many people to talk to. Um, so I'm feeling the pressure of time, right? Where
Oh, yeah,
where I really need to um you know um be maybe done with the writing by the end of the academic year too yet.
right.
So I don't work that quickly, so it might be a stretch, right? But
Yeah. Okay.
ideally, we would maybe spend one more year doing this project.
Okay. So it might go into 2025 then, just because of logistics and everything.
Yeah, but I mean, at some point, it's kind of like this is the story that we see right now, and it's changing just because communities
Yeah.
always are, they're living organisms, and we're all
Right.
changing. So,
Yeah. Exactly.
um,
Um, so what other things have you learned as you're doing this? You're dealing with the logistics of coordinating, getting a huge flood of information in from all different sources and
mhm,
all different platforms. And it's like, how do you you probably have a very organized mess, I'm assuming. It's like, how are you dealing with this whole massive,
mm,
you know, deluge of information, both video and text and, uh, you know, uh, different interactions with people and emails and stuff like that.
mhm,
How how are what are you trying to do and figuring out and try to organize all that? If I'm speaking from an
mhm,
actual learner's perspective because I'm
yeah.
actually very curious, like how do you organize all this stuff?
Mhm. Yes, yes, that's a very important point. And at one point, I said, I'm going to be very organized. I'm going to catalog every interaction I have with people online, whether it's like YouTube comments and emails and things like that. And then I realized, oh, I've been cataloging these interactions, but actually, I haven't responded to anyone's email. And it's very easy to get overwhelmed. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like, as you're trying
Yeah.
to sort of figure this out.
Yeah.
Um, and so there is software. There are different types of software that I've tried, but really, I mean, my organization is just like, I mean, I have hundreds of pages of field notes, and I've been laying this out on index cards, just the old-fashioned way, right?
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
that's like sort of the old way to do ethnography, where you have these index cards and you're writing down things and you're organizing them
Mm.
that way. Um, just stacks of index cards laying around my house.
Aw. Yeah.
Um, So I wish I had some kind of like there is definitely a lot of software aimed at this.
Okay.
Um, and there's a word for it, project management software.
Okay. Alright,
A lot
gotcha.
of people would recommend that. A lot of people would tell you it's not worth the time or the expense.
Mm,
Um, so I have Excel documents, where I'm sort of and then there's this process we do called coding, where you're
oh,
looking for patterns in the things that people say.
yeah,
And so there's also coding software and coding management systems and things like that.
interesting.
So I don't really know exactly what to tell you. Um,
It's like living in it, so, it's like there's all these different resources, and it kinda
mhm,
might be like writing where no perfect writing style is perfect for everybody. It's just not like a one size fit all kind of thing. It's
mhm,
like being a researcher is probably very akin to being, a different type of writer. So some people are what they call, uh, plotters, and some people are pantsers. And I mean, they write by the seat of their pants.
yes,
and
I get
and
it, yeah.
and some people are outliners and they plot things out in detail,
Mhm,
and other people
yeah,
are like, I just have to figure stuff out as I go, or else it's not going to
mhm,
get done. And then I tweak stuff in the different drafts of the thing,
yes,
revision kind of thing. And so, it sounds like being a researcher and a learner is very much akin to being kind of like a different kind of writer
mhm.
kind of thing. So,
Yeah, I do feel like a writer. I feel like sometimes I'm writing in my moleskin, right, just to get it all out, and to be thinking about what I'm thinking about before I'm even sort of going through, this is what's in my field notes, and this is what's in my theory notes, and this is what's in my, you know what I mean?
oh, interesting, cool.
So it's just like layers and layers and layers of like,
Yeah,
here's what the theory tells us to expect. Here's what people say. Here's what people do. Here's how people vary according, you know what I mean? It's
yeah, yeah,
um
it's interesting. 'Cause I'm kinda like, so I'm learning about medieval education right now, and I'm reading 2 books.
yes.
One of them, they're
Mhm.
both kind of, 3rd and secondary sources, and so I'm not used to reading that kind of stuff. I'm like, I just give me the broad overview kinda thing, and one of them is more like a 3rd source, and it kinda have a broad overview of the different eras of, medieval education in mostly Europe, um,
Mhm.
and talking about the Christian Academy and stuff. And,
Okay.
I just find, and I have, like, 20 to 30 different Post-it notes in there that I flag that I'm gonna go back and, like, write down all my notes for the different pages. Um,
Mhm.
and, uh I kind of can relate to you because I don't really have an agenda and I don't have like a point or a paper I'm
Mhm.
writing. It's just like I just want to learn about it. And so I'm like taking information in, strikes my fancy is what I'm going to
Mhm.
glom onto. But um, I'm just like, I'm realizing is I don't have a focal point. Like you have a wonderful focal point. I don't.
Mhm.
I'm just like information overload, and I'm like, this is cool, but what am I getting out of this kind of thing? And, so but, so that's kind of the closest I've come. I've never really finished college and stuff, so
Mhm.
I never had to do the papers, which I'm like, "Thank goodness." I don't think I would do very good at them.
Sure you would.
I
Sure you would.
yeah, yeah, but, but, uh, so, do you have any other final thoughts or, um, we're up on an
Mhm.
hour right now.
Yeah.
And we covered a lot of different things,
Mhm.
and you talked about the information overload, trying to streamline where you put, having different notebooks for different types of notes to kind of, start to solidify and have figure out what to talk about in in analyzing everything and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Um, I'd love to uh, talk more on. Um, so is there anything that you've learned in, like, for me, I'm just wading into being online, on camera. I've always worked behind the scenes in media production. So
Mhm.
my dad was an actor, writer, director, and a voiceover talent. So he was like on camera and on mic. And I would always behind the camera, and my biggest thing is I would rehearse with the actors in my dad's voiceover classes and help them with the scripts and stuff that we had. and and sometimes I'd be in part of the ensemble with the background sound effects people, in some
Mhm.
of the old radio uh, scripts that we had, and so that was my little bit of being kind of an actor kind of thing. But
Mhm.
in your interviewing of people, what do you think has helped you, and what mistakes have you learned from?
Mm. That is actually a really good question because as I'm interviewing people, um, it's just a conversation. I think sometimes, especially early on in a study, it's really easy to sort of get worked up about it and worry about, well, what am I going to say, and am I asking the right questions? And I'm telling you, I have to listen to all of these tapes back, and so it's very easy to be critical of, oh my god, I sound like a moron. But
Oh,
I think as I'm going on, I'm it's not about me. It's really about listening to other people, hearing what they have to say, whatever it is that day.
mm,
Um and being okay with being, especially as these are going on online sometimes,
mm,
now, or as I am, you know, showing up occasionally on someone else's live stream, or your show or whatever. I think it's just
sure,
about being willing to sort of be, the unpolished person that
right,
I am,
right,
um, and to remember that people are doing this with me, that this is a community that's really worth it.
yeah,
What a cool space this is, just to kind of focus on those things.
yeah,
And so I guess I'm learning. I think I really just want to make space for people. I think these are, really real stories, and I don't want to get in the way of that. So sometimes that means I
mm,
have to back off a little bit.
mm.
But I don't know. But a minute ago, I wanted to encourage you in the project you're doing on medieval religion. Was it um,
Education,
education? That's right.
yeah,
That's right.
uh,
Because you're reading these books and you're doing this until I want to hear more about that. That's just so exciting.
sure.
Um,
I could try to do a video about it. Maybe that's what I should do is like kind of have do research and then try to do a video of the different things that I've learned. It might facilitate me having like processing it and explaining, okay, this is what I've learned so far. Basically, the different eras, the different changes in how people thought affected how people taught the different subjects, and the
yeah.
subjects changed over the eras, over hundreds of years. And so that's kind of the summary, but I'm like trying to like figure out people and learn about like why people changed and all this kind of stuff. So, um, but I'm not very good with dates and names, which is kind of
Me neither.
important. I'm just like, what can I glean more of like the
Mhm.
essence of all this? And I'm doing it as part of my SCA, Society of Creative Anachronism, um,
Mhm.
uh, journey. Is I thought, well, I don't have room in my apartment for all the accoutrements and gear and everything. What's something that I could do that's medieval? It's something that I'm interested in, and I thought, well, I'd like to learn how they learned back then, and I just like learn everything.
Mhm.
So like learning about mentorship, um, learning about the education system, the academic education, and the actual real, day-to-day living of like how to cook, how they
Yeah.
learn to cook and stuff like that. They didn't have recipes. They have a list of ingredients, maybe,
Mhm.
but they didn't like, measure stuff like we do with our little, teaspoons and cups and things. So
Mhm.
it was very organic and they learned it really well. And it was just a different mindset they had back then.
Yeah.
It wasn't into measuring like the scientific stuff. That was not a
Mhm.
big thing back then.
Yeah.
And so it's just different cultures, a different way of thinking, different worldview, uh, different countries, and so it's a big, huge topic that
Mhm.
I'm just kind of wading into,
Yeah.
um, and I I'm not sure what I'm going to get out of it, but maybe I could do like video
Mhm.
snippets or something. Okay, this is what I learned
Yeah.
from this book, and this is what I learned from that book, and this is what I think of it, kind of thing, maybe. Um,
Yeah, I
one
like that,
one
and yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say, I like how you have that sort of question and answer that you're kind of getting at, like, how did they cook? Well, you know the answer. They didn't, they
Yeah,
didn't use the measuring and those things.
yeah,
So I feel like you're getting a lot out of it, just so to
yeah.
hear you talk about it. Like, I don't.
Oh. I learned that from going to the different meetings. So some people, who are brewers and also love medieval cooking. So I
Mhm,
learned that there's one event called White Rose Inn where people will cook and make different dishes, and like
mhm,
one of them was liqueurs, and people were brewing like they did back
mhm.
then, as best as we can with our modern stuff and our elevation. Our elevation is much different than England or Japan or whatever
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
country it might have been in, kind of thing. But I'm coming up a minute 10, and I'm not sure if you would like to go a little bit longer or if you'd like to wrap up. Um, uh, I know
Oh, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
very flexible either way. I think we kind of I think we covered a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I'm sure I have more questions for you, but I don't remember what they are. So maybe
I do
we
that
can.
too, I do that too. I don't think you talked
Yeah.
enough about your book, which I'm really
Oh, my book,
enjoying.
yes. Thank you very
Um,
much.
that
Yeah.
really betrays somebody who's got deep thoughts, Valerie, so I really enjoyed that. I just
Oh,
wanted to say
thank
thank
you.
you for that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you, reading it and being an advanced, uh, reviewer. So that was really kind of you. Um, let me go to the thing. So if people are interested in learning more about the book where my mouse is not working, let's see here. See here. There we go. So if you're interested, go to writersofmeaning.com. That is the book that we created. It's the anthology for the little corner of the internet, uh, with 9 contributors, including myself, who did pieces, both essays as well as fictional stories. Chad and his wife contributed as well. And their stuff
Yeah,
is really well written. It's got a cliffhanger ending, and so I was like, "What happened?" But it's worth reading, even though you don't know what happened.
yes.
Um, and so uh,
There's really
you can
pretty
go
art.
to the Writers of Meaning YouTube channel and watch the video about the book. Um, and that has more information. It's published, it's out, it's on Amazon. It should, by the time you watch this, it should probably be on Barnes& and Noble and a few others. The details are on writersofmeaning.com. Also, um, I'm going to include Clara's contact information in the video description. So if you want to participate in her research project or have like good sources, a blog post, a Substack, or a video, or willing to be part of be interviewed, please contact her.
Mhm,
Um, the more the merrier. That get more of a holistic view of what's going on in our corner. Um, and also, if anybody would like to be interviewed about their learning projects, I'm mostly concerned and interested in people who are self learners. You could be academic or just on your own, bootstrapping. Um, and I'm interested in learning more about other learners and having my own types of randos conversations with other learners. Maybe someday I'll get some people of renown. I'm not worried about that. I'm just more learning to learn what you are learning about, why you are learning it, things that you have figured out that help you in your learning journey, things that you have problems and you're wrestling with. I want to know about that. This is something I'm very curious about. Um, and so please feel free to check out my website to how to contact me. Um, so those are the two things. Let's see here. Um, so thank you very much for watching Nora Fellowship and for joining me in class. Class, thank you very much for joining me today.
thanks for
And
having
uh,
me.
I wish you the best in your endeavors with the research project and whatever you may do after that. And I'll probably stay in touch with you about other things that I find out. and just because you're a cool person, I like talking to you. And
Awesome.
so, thank you very much for joining us, everyone. You have a good day.